So today we're just going to look at what I drafted at my most recent draft night and go over what happened. I went 2-1 that night. I was pretty happy. Came home with 2 packs. And actually I'll be opening the draft booster at the end of the video. See what we pulled. But let's get started. So first off, pack 1, pick 1 that steered us in this direction. Defiler of Vigor. So that's 3 green creature Phyrexian worm with trample. As an additional cost to cast the green permanent spells, you pay 2 life. Those spells cost green less to cast. If you paid life this way, this effect reduces only the amount of green mana you pay. And whenever you cast a green permanent spell, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So I got to play this once, and really it did nothing besides be a 6/6 trample, and that was because it was close to the end game where I was going to win anyway, more so establish my position. It's still a fun card. I wanted to do green, and my picks that followed pushed me into somewhat of a domain green. So that was my pack 1, pick 1. The MVP for this deck, I would have to say, is a tie between Tatyova and Weatherseed Treaty, and I'm just going to go based off utilization that Weatherseed Treaty is probably going to push out Tatyova for the true MVP. So 2 and a green with read ahead. It's an enchantment saga. It has search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So that was helpful for keeping me on curve. Create a 1/1 green sapperling creature token. That was nice when I was needing a body on the field to just create space. Oop, intruder alert. We're going to have to take care of this. The intruder has been dealt with. So, sapperling, body on the body out there for when we wanted to have some defense. And then lastly, domain. Target creature you control gets +X/+X and gains trample until end of turn, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. When that happened, honestly, my opponents almost unanimously roll their eyes in annoyance that they would have to decide what they were going to basically lose, because I was typically hitting 4 for domain pretty easily, and that was pretty much rolling over anything on the battlefields that were out there. So yeah, Weatherseed Treaty. Tatyova. So Tatyova, 2 green and a blue, legendary creature, Merfolk Druid. Land creatures you control have flying. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if you control 7 or more, up to 1 target land becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with haste. It's still a land. So this card, I get to really use it in its totality once, but still it was a lot of fun with just being able to deliver those final blows with these land cards that are 3/3 flyers with haste. And actually I remember I had a 4/4 when I had King Darien on the field as well, because he gives all other creatures +1/+1. So it was a 4/4 flyer in the air with haste. They really didn't have a response for it. I mean, I was mowing over any small flyers that they had, which is pretty common in this set. I actually pulled 2 Tatyovas, and the second one was the stained glass. So actually quite cool. I didn't have either of them, and now I have both of them for my Dominaria collection. So those were the pack 1, pick 1, and the MVPs, and now we're going to kind of get into what this deck was. So I had a lot of big beastie green, so I had Yavimaya Sojourner. That was okay. I only got to play it once, and it was kind of early, so I did pay up for it. I think I ended up paying 4 mana for it, which is alright, but it is just a 4/6, so it wasn't anything particularly great. Territorial Morrow. This was really cool because I really got to put a threat on the field seemingly early. I mean, I put this out turn 5, turn 6, and this was an 8/8, 10/10 at one point for me. So that was really something that just demanded attention. I had 2 of them, and it was pretty much absorbing all of their removal. Yashoba Brawler, that was a nice one for just dealing damage early. I mean, putting this down around and turn 2 and you know, after a tap land and then dropping the green. This is hitting for 3 pretty soon after that. We're hitting full 4. So that was nice for early damage. Sunbathing Rootwalla. This card is notorious to me after I got beat up by this card. And I like that it scales with the game because it's a 2-drop early on, but then you can pump it for 4 or 3 and a green, and you get a +1/+1 for each basic land type among lands you control. So basically 3 and a green, and you're getting +4/+4 on top of this 2/2, so it's a 6/6. That is awesome. I only got to do that once, but it's a great threat for defense as well. If they're going to swing in and you have the open mana, pump it up to block. That was great. Moving down here, now we're in red. We had Maria's Outrider, so 4 and a red with Reach. Reach came in handy. Came in handy for when they were trying to sneak in some air attacks. Domain, when it enters, it deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of basic land types among the land you control. So this was nice for chipping in. I was getting 4s off this easy. I pretty much, I had 2. I was running 2, but I was only able to get 1 out per game at most. Next, Rada's Firebrands. This was nice because I needed some cheap creatures, and she was filling this niche for me. Got a foil of her, so that's going to be nice for the collection. She's a human warrior, and whenever she attacks, target creature defending player controls with power less than Rada's power can't block this turn. So that was really nice because it pretty much, in the early game, when they probably, if that, had 1 creature, that creature typically wasn't blocking me. Domain, you can pump it up for 5 and a red, and then that's discounted based on the number of basic land types you control. So I think I had done that once or twice. Really great card. I enjoyed that. Phoenix Chick, I just threw that in because I play this on standard, and I honestly couldn't help it. I love mono red, and this is when it came in my hand early, and it did for 1 game, I was chipping in damage early, and actually combined with Gaia's Might late game, which I do have Gaia's Might out here. Yes. Pump that up to a 6/6. Yeah, that was in the air. That can really finish a game unexpectedly. If they're just letting this chip in, you know, unsuspecting, they're not worried about it. It's 1 per turn. But then you pump it up through that or any of the other domain-like effects. I don't think I have any that target other creatures. I have a lot that target themselves. King Darien, so 1 and a green and a white legendary creature, human soldier. He really only came into play for me for 1 game. Other creatures you control get +1/+1. We talked about that with Tatyova. That was really nice for the land flyers. You can pay 3 green and white, put a +1/+1 counter on King Darien, and create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. Honestly, I was forgetting about that left and right and not doing it, especially there was one time where I really could have afforded to do it, but I didn't. So, and then you could sacrifice this. Creature tokens you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Really, I'm thinking that is good for board wipes. If you're doing a go wide and you really wanted to maintain your position, this really does neutralize board wipe threats with that ability. Other than that, quite niche in the ability. Okay, other creatures that didn't really fit the main form of this deck. We had Floriferous Vine Wall. I threw that in there, so it's 1 and a green, plant wall with Defender. Enters the battlefield. Look at the top 6 of your library. Reveal a land card. Put it in your hand. Rest in the library in a random order at the bottom. So that was really helpful for my mana, making sure I stayed on curve. And also just being a cheap blocker. Needed some cheap creatures in this deck, and that did the thing. Over here we had Salvage Mana Worker, so these are another filling in for my mana fixing. Just cheap 2-drops, 1/3 bodies. I can basically pay 1, get a mana of any color. I did use that a few times for, if it was kicker or just hitting. I have, a variety of off-color cards in here. I do. This is probably the only white I was running. I did have another in contention, and we'll go over the cards that I didn't include, but I did want some combat tricks, although I still only ended up with 2, but Mana Worker was great for helping me hit those colors that I may not have established early in the game. Relic of Legends, I kept this in because this was the card that I started with. This is 24 cards in total here, but this is the card that I actually cut after my first game, and I replaced with Phyrexian Espionage. This costs 3. I get a tap add 1 mana of any color, tap an untapped legendary creature you control, and add 1 mana of any color. So really, I was just doing it for the mana fixing. I realized soon I had way too much with the mana workers and with Weatherseed Treaty and with Vine Wall and with all my card draw. I really didn't need this. So I took this out and I just put in Espionage because I just thought that had much greater payoff rather than being so nuanced and costing 3 mana. So equivalent of 2 in a blue. I kept that out after the first game. Combat tricks, we had Take Up the Shield, so 1 and a white for the instant. +1/+1 counter on target creature, gains lifelink and indestructible until end of turn. This card was very helpful, especially in these big beefy decks. I ended up losing the game that I'm thinking about, but in one of the last turns, he did an all-out attack with his go wide deck. I put this on my biggest creature. I believe it was Morrow, who was an 8/8 territorial Morrow, and then I was able to kill his biggest creature attacking, give me +8, keep me in the game for another round. Really came down to what I drew, and what I drew didn't help me, but I really like that card for that reason. Gaia's Might, this is obviously a necessity in a domain deck. If you're able to pick this up, 1, you're paying a green for target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each basic land types among the lands you control. So this is really a finisher. Like I said, I could put this on Phoenix Chick, or if I was attacking with anything with Trample and I really wanted to finish it off, I loved having this card. Honestly, I didn't use it as much, but I had it in my hand a lot, and it showed me a lot of options. For my card draw, which I really love card draw, Phyrexian Espionage, 2 in a blue, sorcery, get to draw 2 cards straight up. If I kick it for 1 in a black, which I really only had 1 dual land with black, that was my only access to black, so that didn't happen very often. Each opponent discards a card. I really wasn't worried about making my opponent lose their hand, so pretty much played that for the 2 draw. Very helpful, so that was 3 mana. I had Timely Interference, so that's a blue for target creature gets -1/-0 until end of turn. If this spell was kicked, that creature blocks this turn if able. Draw a card. I did use it for the kicker ability as well. If I wasn't just trying to draw a card, I was trying to get them to commit their creature to defending so I can blow up that creature with my attacker, especially if they were tapped on mana. I did indeed do that, and that was a nice play. I did enjoy that. Impulse. It's a 1 in a blue instant. I get to look at the top 4 of my library, put 1 of them in my hand, and the rest of them the bottom of my library in any order. This was really helpful, especially if I'm looking for mana or in a situation where looking for creatures. I like the variety that this gives me for just 1 in a blue. And then similarly, Joint Exploration. I could kick it for green. So scry 2, then draw a card. If this was kicked, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. The kicker felt weird to me because I really rarely did I have this card in the early game when I was maybe having a lot of land in my hand. And if I guess we were trying to figure that out. If I play this with kicker, am I able to play a land card that was from the cards that I draw? And the consensus was that I could if I drew a land, and that would have been my second land I could play for turn. I played it. But really with Tatyova too, this did kind of run into each other with, I did want to keep my lands in hand. The situation was that I didn't have Tatyova on the field yet, but I needed the green to put her out there because she does require 2 greens. So they did run into each other once. But other than that, I obviously included the card because I like the card because I get to scry and I get to figure out, if I'm going to draw into something that I want rather than just a blind draw like Phyrexian Espionage. As far as the dual lands go, we had a couple. So we had Sunlit March. This is my only access to black, but it was helping me out with white as well. And just getting I was primarily green with red and blue. Red for creatures, blue for some of the spells. So this really helped me build up my domain. Blue and red, so like I said, helping me with my secondary colors, Molten Tributary. And I had 2 of those, so that was very helpful. And I had a white and a blue, and green and red. So I was able to get 5, and they were all very helpful. And that is it for this deck. I want to go over real quick what I didn't include, but I did draft. So we'll talk about that now. And these are the rejects. So going through them, I had a nice little foil Elfheim Worm. That's 4 and a green for a creature worm, vigilance, and trample. And I just thought that for costing so much and doing not a whole lot, I mean, vigilance and trample, yes, that's nice on the aggressive side of things, but it wasn't really what I felt like the deck was going for. So I kept it out. I was looking for more effect, and this did not have that. Bog Badger, so 2 and a green for pretty much nothing, because the kicker was black, and I knew I probably was going to be paying that. So you're paying 3 for a 3/3, and I just thought that in this deck there were other better options. I mean, Tatyova is, 2 green and a blue, and you got so much more. So for my 3-drop creatures, I definitely had better options. And Niel. Next is Niel Avizoa Aeronaut. So this was 2 green and a blue, and that was fitting into my colors well. So, and it was a flyer, and it had Domain Win. Niel deals combat damage to a player. Look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. Put up to one of them on top of your library and the rest on the bottom in random order. Then if there are 5 basic land types among lands you control, draw a card. So I knew I probably was going to be hitting 5 because I wasn't going to be doing black, besides for that 1 tap land. So I wasn't going to put her in just for that. And it was just setting me up to be on curve for mana in situations where I'm taking up a draw for that. And I had better cards to be establishing me than this. And then I'm looking at it as bare minimum a 4-drop effectively for a 2/4 flyer. I wanted a little bit more, and this wasn't delivering. Okay. Bortuk Bone Rattle. I just weirdly like this card. I think it's such a cool design. I mean, I love Golgari. I do like black-green. And I do love Graveyard Interaction. So this card really does appeal to me, but I couldn't find... I felt like by keeping it in... This was one of my later cuts. Keeping it in just felt wrong. It's quite expensive. It's